Welcome back to Betrayal Stories, the place for the juiciest tales. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our latest stories. My name is Ryan, I'm 25, and I work as a software developer at a small tech company just outside the city. I've been friends with Ethan since college, and we've stayed close all these years. Today's story is about an unexpected day that changed everything for me and his family. Ethan and I have known each other for years, but I've always been drawn to his mom, Linda. She has this warmth and energy that's simply captivating. Every time I visited, I would often end up chatting with her, sometimes even more than I did with Ethan. She's easygoing, laughs at my jokes, and honestly, she's beautiful. There's something magnetic about her that I just couldn't ignore. So, when I had a free day, I decided to surprise Ethan with a visit. I didn't think too much about it, grabbed my keys, and drove over without calling ahead. I thought it'd be a fun, spontaneous catch-up. When I arrived, Ethan wasn't home, but Linda opened the door and looked surprised to see me. She greeted me warmly, laughing softly as she invited me in. "Well, this is a surprise," she said, with that characteristic smile. "Ethan didn't mention you were coming." I smiled and rubbed my neck. "I thought I'd surprise him," I replied. She laughed and stepped aside. "Well, he's not here, but you're welcome to stay until he gets back." Just then, a heavy downpour suddenly started, making it difficult to leave. Linda looked out of the window, raised an eyebrow, and turned back to me. "You're definitely not going anywhere in this weather," she said, her smile widening. "Looks like you're going to have to stay a little longer." I nodded, secretly glad for the excuse to stay. She led me into the living room, where we settled down. The sound of the rain created a quiet, intimate atmosphere. As we sat and chatted, I couldn't help but appreciate her presence more and more. Linda offered me a warm cup of tea as the rain beat against the windows. As we sat in the cozy living room, we talked about work, life, and of course, a little bit about Ethan. Her laughter was soft and welcoming and made me feel at home. Every now and then our eyes would meet, linger a little longer than usual, and I could feel that subtle spark between us. As we talked, she leaned back in her chair and crossed her legs casually. I couldn't help but notice her graceful, confident posture. She was 50, yes, but there was something timeless about her. Her energy, her smile, it all felt so youthful, and I found myself mesmerized. I tried to hide it, but I think she noticed because her eyes twinkled with amusement whenever I looked in her direction. "So, Ryan," she said with a playful grin, interrupting my thoughts, "you seem awfully quiet tonight. Something on your mind?" Caught off guard, I stammered, giggling nervously. "I guess I just didn't expect to be here like this, just the two of us." She tilted her head, her gaze warm and teasing. "Well, it's a nice surprise," she said quietly. "Ethan's not around much these days, and it's good to have some company." Her words were casual, but the warmth in her tone made my pulse quicken. We continued talking, and eventually the conversation turned more personal. She told me about her youth, her dreams, and how her life had changed over the years. I found myself completely absorbed, hanging on every word. As the hours passed, the storm outside intensified and showed no sign of abating. Linda glanced at the clock, then back at me with a thoughtful smile. "Looks like the weather isn't going to clear up anytime soon," she said. "It's really coming down out there." I nodded and looked out the window at the torrential downpour. "Yeah, I don't think I'm going to make it home tonight," she nodded, her voice soft with understanding. "Well, you're welcome to stay here if you want. Ethan's room is just down the hall." I smiled, grateful but aware of the excitement bubbling up inside me. "Thanks, Linda. I'd really appreciate it." She disappeared for a moment and returned with extra blankets, placing them on the couch next to me. Our hands brushed as she handed them over, and I felt a rush of warmth go through me, making me look up at her. She held my gaze, her expression soft and inviting, and for a moment everything outside seemed to fade away. "You know," she said quietly, almost in a whisper, "I always thought you were a charming young man, And now that you're here, it's been really nice talking, just the two of us." My heart raced. "Me too, Linda," I replied. The air between us was thick with unspoken emotions. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine, and then slowly leaned closer. I felt her warmth, the soft scent of her perfume filling the space between us. I knew then that this was a moment I'd never forget. She held my gaze for a moment, and I saw the warmth in her eyes. Then, without breaking eye contact, she reached over and brushed a loose strand of hair from my forehead, her fingers lingering longer than necessary. My breath caught as her touch sent a thrill through me, and I instinctively leaned into her hand. "Ryan," she whispered softly, almost a sigh, "you're really something." The words hung in the air, and at that moment, I couldn't hold back any longer. I moved closer and gently took her hand in mine. Her skin was warm and soft, and she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in, her lips parting slightly as if inviting me to come closer. My heart racing, I leaned forward and brushed my lips against hers, tentatively at first. She responded, her kiss tender and warm, her hand resting gently on my cheek. We paused for a moment, and when our eyes met again, there was no hesitation between us. I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her closer as our kiss deepened, a passion that had been building all evening. She sighed softly against my lips, and her hand moved to the nape of my neck, pulling me close as if she had been waiting for this too. Her touch sent a jolt through me, and I couldn't help but let my fingers trace the curve of her waist, feeling her warmth beneath my touch. Slowly, she pulled away, her eyes shining with a playful glint. "You know," she whispered, "I never thought this would happen, but now, well, I think we both know where this is going." I smiled and nodded. "I'm glad." The rain continued to pour outside, but inside everything felt warm and close. She leaned back into the couch, pulling me with her, and I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close. Her fingers traced patterns down my back, each touch igniting new warmth between us. Our lips met again, this time deeper, more intimate. Her hands explored, their warmth inviting, as if she had been waiting for this moment as much as I had. Her fingers slid down my arms, her touch light and teasing, and I couldn't help but smile against her lips. She looked at me with the same warmth in her eyes, her fingers resting on my chest as if she could feel my heart racing under her touch. I leaned down and kissed her neck, letting my lips linger as I felt her shiver against me. Every moment felt timeless, and I lost myself in the warmth of her embrace, our hearts beating together as the rain poured down outside. She sighed softly and arched slightly so that my hand could find the curve of her waist, a perfect fit under my touch. Encouraged by her response, I let my hand slide slowly, tracing the outline of her back, feeling the warmth through the thin fabric of her jumper. She let out a soft murmur, and her hand came to rest on my shoulder, pulling me closer. Her warmth enveloped me, and the feeling was magnetic. I couldn't help but lean down and brush my lips along the side of her neck, savoring the softness of her skin and the way she shivered, tilting her head to the side to invite me further. I slowly pressed against her, making her respond more intensely, and slowly tried to slip my hands inside her jumper. It felt amazing to feel her softness, and it made me more energetic. I couldn't hold back from exploring her more. Our eyes locked, and there was a shared understanding between us. I leaned in again and kissed her deeply, savoring every moment. My hand found her hip, and I felt her pulse quicken under my touch. She seemed to relax completely against me, her body molding to mine as I held her close, every touch now feeling more natural, more connected. She looked at me, her eyes warm, full of emotions we couldn't quite express. Then, with a soft smile, she leaned back into the couch and guided my hand to her shoulder, her fingers intertwining with mine. I let my other hand slide down her leg, feeling the warmth beneath my palm as I gently stroked her thigh. The closeness between us was undeniable, and our kisses slowed, savoring each moment as our connection deepened, making me lose track of everything but the feeling of her in my arms. As we pulled apart, breathless and dazed, the world outside had changed. The rain continued to fall, creating a subdued atmosphere that enveloped us in our own little world. I could see the flush in her cheeks, the way her lips glistened from our kisses, igniting a spark of desire deep inside me. I had never felt anything like it, a primal connection that drew me closer to her and urged me to explore further. "Perhaps we should take this somewhere more comfortable," she suggested, her voice low and inviting, laced with mischief. I could only nod, a rush of exhilaration sweeping over me as she led me down the dimly lit hallway to her bedroom. The door creaked open to reveal a room that felt both intimate and welcoming, softly lit by the warm glow of a lamp. The room was tastefully decorated, but it was her presence that really brought it to life. She turned to face me, her gaze steady and charged with energy, the air between us thick with anticipation. As the door clicked shut behind us, the sound echoed in the silence, intensifying the moment. I stepped closer, drawn to her like a moth to a flame, my heart racing as she took a step towards me. I reached for her hand, our fingers intertwining, the warmth of her skin sending something electric through me. I pulled her closer with a gentle tug, my other hand brushing her waist, feeling the softness of her body against mine. She looked up at me, her eyes sparkling with desire and mischief, and I felt my resolve slip away as I leaned down and captured her lips once more. The kiss deepened, becoming more urgent as I pulled her against me, our bodies fitting together perfectly. I could feel her warmth radiating into me, each kiss sending electric waves through my veins. Her hands roamed up my arms, tracing the muscles before tangling in my hair, pulling me closer and urging me to explore further. When I broke the kiss, I looked into her eyes and saw the reflection of the heat and passion we'd ignited in each other. I pressed my forehead against hers, savoring the moment, feeling both exhilarated and vulnerable. "Are you sure about this?" I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. Her answer came in the form of a soft smile and she nodded, her eyes locked with mine. "I've never been more sure of anything," she replied, her voice calm and warm. With that affirmation, I leaned down again and captured her lips. This time I stepped back and gently guided her onto the bed. The mattress felt soft and inviting, and as she sank into it, I hovered over her, the anticipation in the air palpable. I took my time, letting my lips. I trailed my tongue down her neck, kissing softly along her collarbone, savoring every moment as I felt her body tremble under my touch. Her fingers danced along my back, urging me on as I explored her, inch by tantalizing inch, savoring every breath, every sigh that escaped her lips. I stopped for a moment and looked down at her. The way she looked at me, filled with longing and trust, took my breath away. I leaned closer, our bodies perfectly aligned as I pressed against her. My hand brushed over her thigh, a gentle yet possessive gesture that sent shivers through both of us. As the rain continued to beat against the window, I lost myself in her, the world outside fading away. I moved with intensity, fueled by our connection. Every kiss, every touch, exploring the depths of our desires. Our bodies moved in sync, lost in the rhythm of passion, and I felt a sense of fulfillment wash over me as each moment drew us closer. The night stretched on, filled with whispered laughter and gasps of pleasure as we lost ourselves in each other. The boundaries of our friendship blurred, replaced by something deeper, something wild and beautiful. I had never imagined a night could unfold like this. Each moment brought us closer, enveloping us in a cocoon of intimacy. Eventually, as exhaustion crept in, I lay beside her, my arm draped protectively around her shoulders. We were both panting, our breaths mingling as we took in the aftermath of our connection. I felt her fingers lightly trace patterns across my chest, and I leaned down to kiss her forehead gently, savoring the warmth of her body against mine. "Tonight was incredible," I murmured, my heart swelling with emotions I couldn't quite put into words. She turned to me, a soft smile on her lips. "It really was," she replied, her eyes sparkling with satisfaction and a hint of mischief. "I think I could get used to this." As we drifted into a peaceful slumber, the rain outside began to ease, but inside our hearts remained intertwined, forever changed by this unexpected night of passion. I knew then that this was just the beginning of something special, a story woven with threads of desire, fire, friendship, and newfound love. We lay in each other's arms, basking in the afterglow of our passion. The world outside was slowly returning to normal. The rain had eased, and the rhythmic pattering against the window provided a soothing backdrop to our whispered conversations and soft laughter. Just as I was drifting off to sleep, the sharp ring of the doorbell jolted me awake. I froze, my heart racing as I glanced at her. There was a mixture of surprise and panic in her eyes. The reality of the moment crashed down upon us. Her son, my friend, was home. "Is that him?" she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, it's him," I replied, my mind racing. We quickly scrambled to get up, but the frantic rustling of sheets and clothes only added to the chaos. The doorbell rang again, more urgent this time, and my pulse quickened. "Quick, hide!" she urged, her eyes wide with urgency. I looked around the room, desperately searching for a place to hide. Without thinking, I dove into the cupboard and pressed myself against the wall, my heart pounding in my ears. I held my breath, straining to hear what was happening outside the bedroom. "Mum, are you home?" I heard my friend call out, his voice echoing through the house. "I thought I'd find you here," he said. She opened the door to the living room, her demeanor changing from excited to calm. "Yes, I'm here," she replied, her voice calm despite the chaos in her heart. I could see her through the back of the cupboard door, standing tall, her expression giving nothing away. I couldn't help but admire her composure in such a tense moment. "Did you get caught in the storm?" he asked as he entered, completely oblivious to the atmosphere in the house. "I just had a little shower," she replied, a hint of nervousness creeping into her voice. "But I'm fine. How was your day?" "It was good. I was hoping we could get together. I brought some snacks from the shop," he said cheerfully. I couldn't help but smile, amused at the normality of his words in contrast to the intensity of what had just happened. "Of course, just give me a moment," she said, glancing back towards the bedroom door as if sensing my presence. I held my breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Would she invite him in? Would he sense something was wrong? "All right, I'll be right there," she said, turning away from the door and coming back to me. I could see the determination in her eyes, determination not to let this moment slip away. "Quick, get dressed," she whispered urgently, her heart racing as fast as mine. I quickly dressed, trying to calm my frantic thoughts. I could hear my boyfriend moving around the living room, the sound of bags rustling as he rummaged through them. "Do you think he knows?" I asked quietly, panic creeping into my voice. "No, he can't," she replied, biting her lip, a mixture of excitement and fear on her face. "Just act normal, we'll figure it out." With one last look at each other, we braced ourselves for the return to reality. I stepped out of the closet, my heart still pounding, and joined her in the living room, just as my friend turned back to us with a huge grin on his face. "There you are. I thought you were hiding from me," he laughed, oblivious to the charged energy in the air. "Just organizing a few things," she replied smoothly, giving me a look that spoke volumes. As we settled into the evening, laughter filled the room, masking the tension and unspoken words between us. My heart was still racing, the memory of our passion lingering in the back of my mind. It was a delicate balance between friendship and new feelings, but in that moment, surrounded by the warmth of the connection and the excitement of what had just happened, I knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning of a complicated, beautiful story that neither of us could have anticipated.